You've probably heard this idea floating around, right? The secret to incredible, lasting passion in a relationship is all about polarity. This magnetic energy between so-called masculine and feminine forces. It sounds really compelling. I get it. But today, we're going to put that very seductive idea under a clinical microscope and see if it actually holds up.
I mean, it's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you keep that spark alive year after year, decade after decade? Well, the polarity model comes along and offers this very specific, very tempting answer. It basically promises a blueprint for desire. But the question we have to ask is it a blueprint for a healthy connection?
So the core idea is pretty simple, almost like a law of physics. You've got two opposite poles. The masculine is pitched as this steady, logical container, the one providing direction and structure. And the feminine is this vibrant, emotional, flowing energy that, fills up that container. The theory goes that the bigger the difference between these two, the more powerful the attraction. Simple, right?
Okay, so let's dig into that promise for a second. Let's really understand what this model is selling and why it's become so incredibly popular. This quote right here just gets straight to the heart of it. Notice what it's saying. It's not about shared values. It's not about friendship or deep connection. It's all about contrast. According to this model, getting too similar is the absolute enemy of passion. So if you want to keep desire on the boil, you have to actively maintain this opposition. Okay, but here is where our entire analysis is about to take a very sharp and maybe uncomfortable turn. We're going to look at what happens when you take these idealized roles and map them directly onto established clinical psychology. And this is the central question of this whole explainer. Because, when you strip away all the fancy mystical language about energy and essences, the behaviors that are being prescribed, well, they start to look eerily similar to patterns that therapists have been treating for decades. So let's start with the masculine role. It's defined by things like leading, holding an unwavering frame, and demanding appreciation. Now, just look over at the traits for narcissistic personality disorder. A deep need for admiration, a need for control, a fundamental lack of empathy. The analysis here points out that this masculine role creates the perfect stage for someone who needs what's called narcissistic supply. That required appreciation becomes the fuel that feeds their ego. And here's the other side of that same coin. The feminine role is all about surrender, emotional flow, and this deep reliance on the partner's containment. Now compare that to the core traits of borderline personality disorder, an absolutely intense fear of abandonment, emotional instability, and a pattern of wildly idealizing a partner. In this model, the constant threat of depolarizing, failing to perform your role correctly, could just chronically trigger that deep BPD fear of being left. And it doesn't even stop there. There's another clinical layer. The feminine role also lines up pretty neatly with dependent personality disorder. The model's ideal of surrender actively discourages you from disagreeing, which perfectly mirrors the DPD criterion of fearing you'll lose support. That reliance on masculine direction, it aligns exactly with the need for others to take responsibility for huge parts of your life. So, you put these two roles together in a relationship, and what do you actually get? Well, you get a structure that is, for all intents and purposes, identical to clinical codependency. The masculine container becomes the giver, getting his sense of worth from being needed. The feminine flow becomes the taker, whose entire sense of safety and self depends on the other person. The scary part is the model doesn't just risk this dynamic, it actually presents it as the ideal state for passion. Okay, let's build on that. That push-pull dynamic, the thing that's often celebrated as erotic tension or sexual polarity, actually has a much, much darker name in clinical psychology. It's called a trauma bond, and it's basically an addictive cycle where the intense highs you feel are just the relief that comes after a period of distress, anxiety, or withdrawal from your partner. It's not about healthy connection at all. It's about the addictive, drug-like nature of intermittent reinforcement. And here's exactly how that cycle maps right onto the polarity model. The masculine partner withdraws or holds his frame. This, of course, triggers the feminine partner's anxiety, so she pursues. Her pursuit makes him withdraw even more, which ramps up her distress to an almost unbearable level. And then when he finally decides to re-engage, the feeling of relief is so powerful, so overwhelming, it creates this incredibly strong addictive bond. What's being sold as passion is, clinically speaking, an addictive cycle. So the big question is, why on earth are these unhealthy models so appealing to people? Well, attachment theory gives us a really clear answer. The argument is that these roles aren't creating passion from nothing. They're just validating insecure attachment patterns that are already there. Someone with an anxious attachment style is drawn to the feminine role because it promises the constant containment they crave. And someone with an avoidance style, they're drawn to the masculine role because it gives them a noble-sounding excuse for the emotional distance they're already comfortable with.
So, if polarity isn't the answer, what is? Well, thankfully, decades of clinical research point to a much healthier and, frankly, more effective alternative.
You see, the healthy goal isn't dependence, where you basically lose yourself in the other person, and it's not total disconnected independence either. The healthy ideal, the gold standard, is interdependence. This is where two whole, complete, autonomous people choose to rely on each other, creating a partnership that's based on genuine desire, not on desperation or neediness.
And interdependence is built on these pillars right here. It requires strong personal boundaries, not ones that are all blurry and enmeshed. Support goes both ways. It's mutual and reciprocal, not a one-way street. And most importantly, the relationship actually enhances each person's autonomy instead of squashing it. This whole framework is basically the direct clinical antidote to the codependency we were just looking at.
And this is so important. This is the key takeaway. A healthy, passionate, lasting relationship is not about performing a pre-written script of masculine and feminine. It's about building real trust and deep attunement over time, creating a foundation of what psychologists call earned security.
All right, this brings us to the final and maybe the most critical part of our whole analysis. It's time to debunk the central myth that opposition and contrast are somehow necessary for desire. I mean, this is the core claim of the entire polarity model, right? That familiarity breeds contempt, or at the very least, boredom. But is that actually true? Does getting closer really kill the spark? The research from world-leading experts like the Gottman Institute is just overwhelming on this point. It's not even a debate. Lasting passion is not a product of difference. It is an outcome of deep, intimate friendship, mutual understanding, and emotional attunement. The real spark comes from connection, not from contrast. So where does real, sustainable desire come from? It comes from growth. It comes from the thrill of seeing your partner as a separate, whole person who continues to evolve and surprise you. It's fueled by taking risks, deepening your vulnerability, and sharing new and novel experiences together. That's what continually renews the sense of mystery and connection, not playing a role. And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. The solution isn't to find your opposite half who will somehow complete you. The real work is to become a whole integrated person yourself, who can then partner with another whole integrated person. True health in a relationship means developing your own capacity for logic and emotion, for leading and for receiving, all within yourself. So I want to leave you with this question to really reflect on. The dynamic you're currently in, or maybe the one you're looking for, is it based on performing these rigid oppositional roles? Or is it based on the mutual respect, the shared empathy, and the earned security of a true partnership between two whole people? Because the answer to that question makes all the difference in the world.